Have you ever wondered if everything that's happened in your life, the rejections, the doors that slammed shut, the dreams that never came true, were ever truly random? Or were they quiet messages from the universe sent not to break you, but to awaken something within your soul? Maybe the pain you've been avoiding is actually the doorway to light. Maybe the people who came and left weren't mistakes, but unnamed teachers. And maybe what you've called delay all this time is actually sacred timing, preparing you for a transformation you weren't quite ready for. In Buddhism, life isn't seen as a string of random events. Every loss, every heartache, every disappointment carries a deeper message that nothing is meaningless, that you're not being punished. You're being gently guided, not to fall apart, but to return home to yourself. So if you're ready, let's begin with the first truth one. Loss is a lantern that lights the soul. There's a feeling you've probably experienced, even if you didn't have a name for it. It's that quiet, hollow ache when something slips away from your life. A person, a dream, a hope that once felt so close. And then all of a sudden, it's gone. At first, it feels like you've fallen into a void, like someone turned off the lights in the middle of the night and you're left standing in a dark room, unsure where you are or how you'll ever find your way out. But pause for a moment. Take a slow, steady breath. Because if you can be still, if you can resist the urge to fill the silence with noise, you might start to sense something unexpected. True light doesn't come from outside. It begins to flicker quietly from within you. You see, not every loss is an ending. Some things only begin after something else has fallen apart. Maybe you once loved someone deeply. You trusted. You built a future in your mind. And then the relationship ended, not on your terms, not when you were ready, and your world felt like it collapsed. I won't pretend the pain isn't real. It is. But I invite you to look deeper, to see what began in you after the pain. Because sometimes it's in the emptiness that a deeper part of you begins to speak. The part you forgot, the part you never had time to hear, the part that knows how to love without clinging, how to hurt without bitterness, how to let go without falling apart. And here's the truth. Some cracks don't show up to destroy you. They're here to make space. Space for light to enter. Space for your true self to emerge, no longer held hostage by what you were trying to hold together. Buddhism has a different way of seeing loss. It's not about what was taken from you. It's about what's being returned. Returned simplicity. Returned understanding. Returned presence, where you don't have to define yourself by others or titles or roles, but by simply being here now. It may not make sense at first. How can pain possibly be a gift? But remember, there are truths you cannot learn when everything is going right. There are parts of your soul that only reveal themselves when the shadow of loss softens the glare of ego. Imagine your soul as a lantern. When it's full, it doesn't shine. It just holds form. But when it's empty, when a quiet flame is lit from the inside, that's when it begins to glow. It's not, despite the loss that the light appears. It's because of it. You don't have to feel strong right away. You don't need to understand all the reasons why it happened. You just need to give yourself permission to pause, to look not with resentment, but with gentleness. Place your hand over your heart. Close your eyes and ask, what did I learn from what I lost? You don't need an answer today. Some questions aren't meant to be answered, only lived with quietly over time. And slowly, you'll see what you thought you lost forever was simply an old shell ready to fall away. So what remains? The real parts, the parts no one can take. Maybe your compassion deepened. Maybe your presence grew stronger. Maybe you learned to love with fewer conditions. Or maybe you learned how to stand alone, but no longer lonely. What you thought was an ending was actually a beginning in disguise. Every loss leaves a space, and every space, when held with awareness, can become a place of light. If you're in a season of loss right now, I want to tell you this. You're not being abandoned. You're being returned, not to the past, but to yourself. A quieter, deeper, truer version of you. Don't rush to heal. Don't pressure yourself to move on. Just be here, breathe, and let yourself see the quiet beauty inside the emptiness. Because light doesn't always come like sunlight. Sometimes it glows like a candle in the dark, soft, warm, and just enough to show you the next step. And that is the kind of light loss can leave behind if you let it. Not forgetting, but wisdom. Not emptiness, but expansion. 2. The soul grows, where comfort ends. There are moments in life when you stop and quietly ask, why is this happening to me? When everything familiar suddenly shifts, the chair you always sat in feels empty. The plans you counted on fall apart. And though your heart isn't screaming, it aches in a way that's hard to explain. Maybe you felt like you were falling behind, like you'd been forgotten halfway down the path. But what you didn't realize is this. In that very moment of unraveling, your soul began to grow. No one truly grows inside a comfort zone. No one discovers who they are when life is easy. Just like a seed can't sprout on polished stone. The soul needs friction. It needs darkness. It needs to lose its way to remember where its light comes from. Have you ever noticed the lotus doesn't bloom in clear water? It rises from mud. And not just any mud, thick, heavy, messy mud. The very thing we avoid is what gives birth to something beautiful. Not because it's pleasant, but because it's real. And your soul, just like the lotus, needs what is real to grow. We've been taught that happiness comes from comfort, a steady job, easy relationships, predictable plans. But there comes a moment when comfort becomes stagnation. You stop questioning. You repeat old patterns. You survive safe, but no longer alive. Then something happens. A disruption. A change you didn't ask for. And your first response is fear. But if you don't run from it, if you have the courage to stay, you begin to feel what ease never taught you. Resilience, stillness, and a self you never knew existed. You learn to stand up without someone catching you. You meet your reflection without makeup, without masks, without forced smiles. You learn to breathe through the storm and realize you're still here. There may be nights when you cry, days when you feel lost, moments when it seems like everything is gone. But from that very soil, something begins to stir. Not a new life from the outside, but a deeper version of you from within. A version of you that accepts. A version that doesn't pretend to be strong yet, is stronger than ever. A version that is grateful. Not because everything is going well, but simply because you're still here, still learning, still loving, still becoming. The soul doesn't grow through praise or degrees or applause. It grows when you have no map, but you keep walking anyway. It grows when you've lost belief, but still choose to keep your heart soft. It grows when you accept this truth. Life isn't always kind, but it's always meaningful if you're willing to stay awake for it. You don't need to go looking for pain. But when it arrives, don't push it away. See it like a heavy rain falling on a dry garden. Yes, it makes a mess at first, but if you're patient, it brings new life. True growth rarely comes from the things you wanted. It usually comes from what you never saw coming. A rejection, a loss, a long season of loneliness. And in all those moments, one question keeps circling back, why me? But slowly, it transforms into something deeper. What is this teaching me? And over time, not in a day, not even in a month, but in the slow unfolding of becoming, you realize the storm didn't break you. It stripped away what was no longer needed, so that what's true could finally rise. Just like a volcano, after it erupts, leaves behind fertile ground for the future. Your losses do the same. They make space for new inner life to grow. So if today you find yourself in the middle of uncertainty, don't rush to fix it. Don't assume you've gone off track. You might actually be right where your soul needs to be. Even if your ego disagrees, slow down, listen in, and remember, the soul doesn't grow where it's easy. It grows where you once thought you couldn't survive, but stayed, breathed, and quietly came back to life. 3. Your delay is not denial. There are seasons in life when it feels like everything has stopped moving. You try, you pray, you wait patiently, but nothing changes. No answers, no momentum. No sign that what you're hoping for is getting any closer. And you start to wonder, have I been forgotten? Will this door ever open? Or worse, maybe I don't deserve it. I know how heavy that silence can feel. It's like standing alone at a quiet train station, watching other trains pass you by. None of them stopping. You hold your ticket in hand, your heart full of hope, but the train meant for you just isn't showing up. And soon, doubt creeps in. You start to question your path. You question your dream. You question yourself. But if you could pause, not to figure it all out, not to fix anything, but simply to be present, you might begin to feel a truth that Buddhism has whispered for thousands of years. Delay is not denial. It's a deeper form of preparation. Think about bamboo. For years, you see nothing above the ground. It looks like nothing's happening. But beneath the surface, its roots are spreading deep, wide, strong. And then, almost overnight, it shoots upward with incredible strength. Fast. Unstoppable. You are no different. You may be in your underground season, where no one sees you, no one praises you, and you feel like you have nothing to show the world. But that doesn't mean you're not growing. It means you're being prepared. There are some gifts life won't hand you until you're grounded enough to hold them without falling apart. You may feel ready, but if those dreams arrive too soon, they could overwhelm you rather than elevate you. Maybe you're waiting for a breakthrough in your career, the right person to walk into your life, or a dream you've carried quietly in your heart, and it just isn't here yet. You feel left behind, but look a little closer. This stillness isn't empty. It's doing work. It's deepening your patience, sharpening your self-awareness, teaching you how to love yourself with no conditions. It's in the space where nothing is happening that you finally get to see who you're becoming. And when what you've been waiting for finally arrives, you will no longer be the same person who once begged for it. You'll meet it with gratitude, with steadiness, and with a heart wide enough to hold it without losing yourself. I remember someone once told me about losing the opportunity of a lifetime. A job they'd wanted for years slipped away. They were devastated, heartbroken, convinced they'd been denied something essential. But just a few months later, another job appeared, one that was not only more prestigious, but more meaningful. This job didn't just need their skills. It needed the calm depth and maturity they had gained from all those days of just waiting. What I'm trying to say is this: you're not falling behind, you're being realigned. Life doesn't follow the timeline of your ego. It follows the ripening of your soul. And when the moment is right, everything will fit as naturally as the final piece of a puzzle sliding into place. So, if today you find yourself in a quiet stretch, waiting for something to happen, take a deep breath and whisper to yourself, I'm not being rejected. I'm being prepared, not just to receive something, but to become someone who can hold it fully, without desperation, without fear, without doubting your own worth. Because not every dream that comes early is a blessing, and not every delay is a loss. Sometimes it's the universe's gentlest way of preparing you for something sacred. And when you're finally ready to understand that, you'll see the waiting was never wasted. It was part of the holy unfolding. And you were never off track. You've been gently guided all along toward what's truly meant for you. 4. Rejection is not a wall. It's a turning point. There's a quiet kind of pain that most of us know all too well: rejection. When someone says no, when the door you've knocked on for so long refuses to open, when the opportunity slips through your fingers and you're left with a dozen unanswered questions. What did I do wrong? Why not me? Am I just not good enough? If you've ever felt this way, I want you to know you are not alone. We all at some point stand before a closed door. And in that moment, it's easy to believe that door is the end, that you failed, that the path you just lost was the only path there was. But maybe rejection isn't a wall. Maybe it's a bend in the road, a gentle detour pulling you away from what you thought was right and guiding you toward what is truly meant for you. Picture this: You're driving through thick fog. You can barely see ahead, so you keep going straight because it's the road you know. Then suddenly a barricade appears. You're forced to stop, frustrated, confused, maybe even angry. But later, you discover that road ahead had collapsed, and that no saved you from a bigger wound. Rejection in life often works the same way. It rarely comes with a clear explanation. It just leaves behind silence, doubt, and hurt. But if you're patient enough to look back later, you'll begin to see what you didn't receive was a form of protection. Maybe the person you loved didn't love you back, because if they had stayed, they would have hurt you more down the line. Maybe the job you dreamed of slipped away, because it would have taken you further from the quiet values you hold dear. Maybe the plan you swore was right fell apart, only to make room for something deeper, something you never even considered. I remember someone once told me that being rejected in love was the most painful thing that had ever happened to them. But that heartbreak, it became the beginning of a journey back to themselves. They learned how to love themselves in a way they never had before. They healed wounds they didn't know were there. And when love returned, it wasn't a desperate search for validation. It was the meeting of two free souls. Rejection isn't the end. It's an invitation to pause and ask, if this isn't where I'm meant to go, then where am I meant to be? You see, in Buddhism, nothing is random. Everything, even the things we didn't want, carries a message. The universe isn't punishing you with rejection. It's redirecting you to something you haven't seen yet. It's closing the wrong doors, not because you're unworthy, but because you're worth so much more. The question is, are you listening? Or are you still standing there, knocking on the door that's already closed? Blaming it for not opening. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to feel disappointed. It's okay to cry. But then, lift your head, look around, because maybe, just maybe, there's another path unfolding quietly to your left or your right. It may not be lined with roses, but it may lead you closer to who you truly are. I'm not saying rejection is easy. I'm saying it might be a turning point, a soft but powerful signal inviting you to step into a new chapter of growth. And who knows? One day, you might look back on that moment and smile. Not because you've forgotten the pain, but because you're grateful for it. Grateful that door didn't open. Because if it had, you never would have found this door. The one that doesn't look shiny, but feels like home to your soul. So, if you're facing rejection right now, take a deep breath. And instead of asking, why not me, try asking, what might be waiting for me on the other side of this road? You are not being rejected. You are being redirected, not to stop, but to begin a path that is truer, brighter, and more deeply aligned with who you really are. 5. The moment you broke was the moment you began. There's a moment in life you never forget. Not because it was glorious, but because it was so quiet it broke you. No warning, no dramatic signal. Just one day someone leaves a door, closes, a truth comes out, or a dream falls apart, and suddenly you no longer feel whole. From the outside, no one sees it. You still smile. You still say, I'm okay. But inside, something cracked. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a silent fracture, like a dry twig snapping in the middle of a forest at midnight. You can't explain it fully, but you know From that moment on, you were no longer the same. And strangely enough, sometimes the very moment you feel like you're falling apart is the moment something new begins. No one chooses to break, but sometimes in life breaking is necessary, not to destroy you, but to open you to something deeper. Picture a ceramic bowl. Whole, it may be beautiful, admired, but if it cracks, and you're brave enough not to throw it away, you can do something extraordinary. Mend it with gold. Like the Japanese art of kintsugi, the cracks aren't hidden, they're honored, because they're where the light touches. They're the story. They are the proof of the journey. I believe our souls are like that too. We don't grow from the peaceful days. We don't discover ourselves in the victories. We discover ourselves in the breaking. When something inside collapses, when you can no longer hold on, when every mask falls away, when silence becomes so heavy you're forced to listen to your own soul. Maybe you once thought you wouldn't survive it, but you did. You're still here. And what's left is the truest part of you, because that crack, as painful as it was, is where compassion is born, where wisdom begins, and where the return to your truest self quietly unfolds. I met someone once who lost everything within months: their loved ones, their job, their health. They told me there were nights they just sat in the dark, unsure what they were even living for anymore. But in that emptiness, something surprising happened. Not a dramatic rebirth, but a quiet return. They began to write again, not for anyone else to read, but just to hear their own voice. And little by little, from the rubble, something new began to rise. Not loud, but steady. Not perfect, but real. So if today you feel broken, don't rush to patch it up. Sit with it for a while. Don't fix. Just breathe and watch what tries to rise through the crack. Maybe it's a softness you've never let yourself feel. Maybe it's an old grief you've never dared to touch. Maybe it's a version of you you've never had the space to meet because you've been too busy trying to be okay. What matters is, after the break, you don't go back to who you were. You don't return to some perfect version. You become someone new, deeper, lighter, and sometimes quieter. That's the real beginning, and you can't force it. You can only live it. One breath, one moment, one tender step at a time. So if you've ever broken, please don't call it failure. Call it a beginning. A sacred milestone where you stopped living for others' expectations and started living by the whisper of your soul. In that fragility lies a quiet power. Not the power of someone who never falls, but of someone who has and still chooses to rise. Not to be strong, but to be real. You don't need to be perfect again. You just need to be more honest with yourself. Because sometimes, it's only when you break that you finally see what's been trying to be born in you all along. 6. Not everyone is meant to stay, but they leave gifts behind. Some people walk into your life like a breeze, brushing past your shoulder. Soft, unexpected, and gone before you even realize they were there. They didn't announce their arrival. They didn't promise to stay. But somehow, you remember them always. Maybe it was a brief romance, a friend you met during a long trip, a teacher who showed up for just a season, or even a stranger you had one deep conversation with, never to cross paths again. Not everyone is meant to stay. Not every connection is built to last. And not every departure is a loss. Buddhism teaches us that every encounter carries a deeper reason. Not so we can possess one another, but so we can discover something within ourselves, something we wouldn't have seen without them. Sometimes, someone shows up to shine a light on a dark corner inside you. They mirror a hurt you've buried. They stir a fear you thought you'd already conquered. They open your heart, and then they leave, leaving you warm and empty all at once. And you're left asking, if they weren't meant to stay, what was the point? But maybe, just maybe, the meaning was in the shortness. Not every presence needs to be permanent to be meaningful. Like a shooting star across the night sky. Brief, silent, breathtaking, and still, it makes you look up. I know some goodbyes leave a heavy ache. You don't understand why they came into your life, made you trust, and then vanished without a reason. You feel let down, hurt, maybe even angry, but over time you begin to notice something. They may not have left words, but they left change. You love more deeply now. You're more careful. You're clearer on what you need and don't need in a relationship. Maybe you gave your heart too quickly once, and through that heartbreak, you learned your boundaries. You learned how to build fences without building walls. You learned how to love without losing yourself. It wasn't that they hurt you. It was that they woke you up. The truth is, those who come and go often change us the most. Not because they were perfect, but because they touched something unfinished inside us and challenged us to grow. Someone who betrayed you may have taught you to listen to your gut. Someone who couldn't love you right may have pushed you to love yourself better. Someone who hurt you may have helped you find your limits. And someone who made you feel alive, only to walk away, might have come just to remind you your heart can still feel. Those are the gifts they leave behind. Not wrapped in pretty paper, not handed over gently, but gifts nonetheless, the kind that shape who you're becoming. You might still think of them, still dream of them sometimes, still whisper what if. But if you look with the eyes of wisdom, you'll see no one enters your life without meaning, and no one leaves without leaving something behind. In Buddhism, this is called karmic connection. Every person is part of your spiritual journey. You meet because of a cause. You part because the cause has ended. No need to cling, no need to resent. And you can ask yourself, what did they leave in me? Maybe it's a scar, but that scar keeps you from making the same mistake again. Maybe it's a memory, but that memory reminds you that you once loved with honesty. Maybe it's an emptiness, but that space is now open for something new to grow. You don't need to forget them. You just need to let go of needing to understand everything. Because sometimes the answer doesn't come from logic. It comes from acceptance and quiet gratitude. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for leaving when it was time. They were never meant for the long road, but they were meant for a chapter, an important one in your story. And now you go on, carrying the lessons, carrying the light, and a little piece of them like a quiet rest note in the song of your becoming. 7. The universe is not punishing you. It's redirecting you. There are moments in life when it feels like everything is turning against you. A door slams shut just as you're about to step through. A dream slips through your fingers right when it seemed within reach. Someone you trusted walks away, leaving you with nothing but questions echoing in the middle of the night. And you begin to wonder, am I being punished? Did I do something wrong? Why is everything falling apart? These questions are deeply human, and if you've ever asked them, know this: you're not alone. We all go through seasons when nothing makes sense, when the life we planned unravels thread by thread. But here's what Buddhism gently reminds us: the universe isn't punishing you. It's redirecting you, not away from life, but closer to your truest self. Because what if the path you were so committed to, as shiny and promising as it looked, was never feeding your soul? What if what you wanted wasn't actually what you needed? Would you have the courage to stop? Or would you keep pushing forward, away from yourself? Sometimes the universe has to interrupt you, not with words, but with events. A shock, a loss, a disruption. Not to hurt you, but to get you to listen. Imagine you're sailing across the ocean. You've got a map, a destination, everything planned. And suddenly, a fierce wind throws you off course. You're angry. You feel betrayed by fate. But then after days of drifting, you spot an island, a place your map never promised, but where you find peace, clarity, and truth. And suddenly, it hits you. That wind didn't ruin your plan. It saved you from your plan. Maybe what you lost wasn't punishment, but release. Maybe the person who left wasn't failure, but freedom. Maybe what feels wrong is just the universe nudging you because it's time to turn in a new direction. I once met a woman who was suddenly laid off after 20 years at the same job. She felt ashamed, useless, completely lost. But a year later, she started writing. Not to be famous, just to heal. Her writings slowly turned into a blog. And that blog began reaching thousands of people who were hurting just like she had. She didn't go back to who she was. She became someone new, deeper, more honest, and more connected to herself than ever before. The universe didn't destroy her. It peeled away what no longer fit. It took what she was clinging to, not out of cruelty, but out of compassion. It saw her drifting off course, and lovingly, though sometimes forcefully, steered her back to her soul's true path. You might not see it now. You might still be in the middle of the storm, but remember, every disruption is an invitation, not to suffer, but to return, to truth, to stillness, to the version of you that you've forgotten in the rush of survival, the one who doesn't need more, but simply needs what's true. I'm not saying every loss is a blessing in disguise, but I believe if you can sit with the question, why, without demanding an immediate answer someday, that question may soften into a quiet kind of gratitude. Thank you for not letting me drift too far from myself. And in that moment, you'll see every turn, every collapse, every goodbye wasn't the end. It was a secret map, left quietly by the universe, to guide you not where you thought you needed to go, but to where your soul has always been calling you home. 8. The quieter you become, the more life speaks. There are days when you're not tired from doing too much, but from thinking too much. Your mind feels like a cramped, noisy room. Half-finished conversations echo in your head. Lingering worries, looping memories, unanswered questions all piling on top of one another like a storm you can't turn off. And somewhere in all that noise, you begin to feel lost. Not everyone notices when this happens. We're used to movement. We've been conditioned to talk to achieve. We're told that silence is laziness, that pausing is falling behind, and that stillness is weakness. But Buddhism sees stillness differently, not as an escape, but as a door. A quiet, sacred opening, not away from life, but deeper into it. Because only when you're truly quiet can you finally begin to hear, not the world, yourself. Imagine a still lake. When you stir it, the reflection disappears. But when the water calms, it becomes clear enough to reflect everything perfectly. Your mind works the same way. When it's stirred up with anxiety, judgment, or expectation, you can't see what you really need. You can't see who you really are. But in the quiet, wisdom begins to take shape, not with loud commands, but with a gentle whisper. This is the path. This is you. I remember someone once telling me, whenever I feel lost, I try to do more. Read more, ask for advice, stay busy. But the more I tried, the more lost I felt. And then one day, she did nothing. No planning, no fixing, no asking. Just sat in silence and breathed. There were no immediate answers, but what she did feel was a sense of return. Something soft, something steady. Not from outside her, but from within. She started to trust herself again, not because someone told her she was worthy, but because she could hear herself. When was the last time you were truly alone? No music, no phone, nothing to fix. We don't fear silence because it's dangerous. We fear it because we can't hide from ourselves in it. But here's the paradox. Only when you stop running can you start healing. Only when you stop talking can you start listening. And only when your mind becomes like that still lake can life begin to whisper the things that matter most. No podcast, no book, no guru can give you an answer your own soul has been quietly trying to tell you. Life isn't short on messages. You've just been too loud to hear them. In the silence, you might hear a quiet nudge that you're headed the wrong way. A sorrow you've been avoiding asking to be held instead of hidden. A dream you left behind gently knocking again. And sometimes you'll hear a soft, steady gratitude that you're still here, still listening, still able to live differently. I'm not asking you to meditate for hours. Stillness isn't a technique, it's a quality of presence. It could arrive as you pour a cup of tea, in a morning without your phone, during a car ride with no music playing. It shows up when you stop trying to be someone and simply allow yourself to be. No striving, no fixing, no proving. Because I believe this stillness is not emptiness. It's a sacred space where truth walks in, where you don't need to speak yet understand, where you don't need to act yet know, where you don't need to chase yet see clearly. And in a world where everything is screaming for your attention, you, the one who knows how to be silent, will hear the most. you'll hear the calling of your soul, the rhythm of truth, the path home. You don't need to do anything. Just become still and let life speak. 9. What falls away reveals what endures. There are moments in life when something quietly slips through your fingers. A person you once thought would walk beside you forever. A job you poured your youth into. A dream you cradled and nurtured piece by piece. And then one day, it just drifts away, like the wind leaving the sails of a boat. You stand there, staring into the emptiness left behind. And somewhere inside, a soft question rises. Did I just lose something? Or did I just see clearly what truly remains? Some things leave and create a space. And if you're quiet enough to not rush to fill that space, you might begin to see something profoundly real. What was temporary and what was true. Maybe you once believed you couldn't live without them, but they left. And yet, you're still here, still breathing, still moving forward, learning how to love yourself from a place that's quieter now. Maybe you thought that job was who you were, but when it was gone, you realized you are not your title, your role, or your resume. You are what's left when all of that fades away. That's the paradox of loss. It doesn't just take things from you, it also reveals. It's like a garden in late autumn. The leaves fall, the branches grow bare. Everything looks stripped and silent. But in that stripped down state, you finally see the roots. What still holds life, even when it's no longer blooming. Buddhism doesn't see loss as failure. It sees letting go as a kind of purification. Not everything that leaves you is a mistake. Sometimes it's life pulling you closer to who you really are. Have you ever looked back and realized there were things you once clung to that no longer feel necessary? Not because you stopped caring, but because you've changed. Because you learned that what's truly yours doesn't stay because you hold it tightly. It stays because it remains when everything else has gone. That person you once loved deeply may no longer be by your side. But through them, you learned to love. You learned boundaries. You learned the courage to let go. And that lesson, no one can take from you. A broken dream might have brought you to your knees. But through that breaking, you discovered what truly lights up your heart. You live more honestly now. You create with more meaning. And from what felt like an ending, you began again. I once spoke with someone who had lost almost everything in 1 year: her job, her partner, her sense of stability. She said, "I feel like a tree stripped bare, nothing left to lean on." But later, she said something I'll never forget. I began to notice what was still here: my compassion, my clarity, and a version of me I never knew existed. That's what the emptiness teaches us. It doesn't destroy us. It reveals the foundation. And that foundation is you. Not the you society wants. Not the you defined by your past, but the raw, still quiet you who touches something that cannot be taken. Maybe you're going through a loss. Someone left. A plan unraveled. A chapter closed. If so, I invite you. Don't rush to fill the space. Don't force a smile. Don't try to replace it too quickly. Sit with it. Feel the emptiness. Listen to it, and then gently ask yourself, what's still here within me? The answer won't come immediately. It will arrive like a breeze, soft, quiet, and so true you'll feel it in your bones. And you'll see you didn't lose everything. You lost what was no longer needed. And in that falling away, what remains will begin to shine. Silently, steadily, and unmistakably human. So don't be afraid when something leaves. Instead, ask, what did it leave behind in me? And what within me still stands even when I thought I had nothing left? That's where life begins again. Not from the outside in, but from the soul outward, where only what's truly enduring has the power to stay. 10. Trust the sacred timing of your becoming. There are dreams you've carried for years. You've seen them in hazy visions while drifting to sleep. You've felt them flickering in your chest like a flame that never fully dies, just waiting for the right moment to rise. You've held on to them through seasons of change, through years when you weren't sure where you were going. And sometimes you've found yourself wondering, why hasn't it happened yet? I've tried. I've believed. I've sacrificed. Why hasn't what I long for taken shape? But maybe the answer isn't about effort. Maybe it's not that you didn't do enough, or that you're not worthy. Maybe it's simply not the season yet. Just like fruit needs time to ripen, dreams need time for you to ripen on the inside. Not so you can get the dream, but so you can fully live it. Some people receive what they wish for too soon and lose it just as quickly, not because they weren't capable, but because they weren't yet mature enough to hold it with clarity and depth. In Buddhism, this is called fruit ripening in right conditions. Not early, not late, but exactly when you are grounded enough to stop chasing what you want and begin embodying who you truly are. I once spoke with a man in his 50s who had dreamed of writing a book since he was young. But life got busy, work, family responsibility, and sometimes the fear that maybe he wasn't good enough. Then one day, as life slowed down, he sat at his desk, opened to a blank page, and began writing. Not for fame, not for praise, but just to speak softly and honestly to himself. And in that unhurried space, his voice became more true, more layered, more real than anything he could have written in his 20s. He told me, if I had written this 20 years ago, it would have been a smart book. But writing it now, it's an honest one. You see, you're not late. You're right on time. For the moment, you're finally ready to live your dream, not just long for it. You may see others reaching milestones before you, faster than you, and part of you may feel left behind. Doubtful, tempted to compare. But remember, no one is walking your journey. No one carries your soul, your wounds, your lessons, or your awakenings. Your path, however slow or quiet, is still sacred. Every step you take, every fall, every silent season, it's all part of your becoming. You're not falling behind, you're being refined. So when the moment arrives, you won't need to cling to it. You'll be able to live in it gently, fully, and firmly. Think of your journey like a clay vessel. If fired too fast, it cracks. If fired too little, it shatters in water. Only when it's been through just the right heat, no more, no less, can it hold the cool, sweet water of the dream within. So trust the sacred timing of your becoming. Don't rush to pluck the fruit before it's ripe. Don't force yourself to bloom when your heart is still in winter. You don't need to race. You only need to walk truthfully, breath by breath. Because everything you're living, learning, and feeling is preparing you for exactly what's meant for you at exactly the right time. And if you get still enough, you'll begin to feel this. You're not being delayed. You're being gently led toward the truest version of yourself. And when you are finally ready, not just to reach the dream, but to inhabit it fully, the universe won't hold it back. Because by then, you'll be someone who can receive it without losing yourself in the process. So, if your path feels slower than others, if your dream still sits on the shelf, if your heart has started to wonder whether it will ever be your turn, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and tell your heart, I am becoming. I trust the sacred timing of my life, and I will arrive not a second too late. If these words touch something in you today, perhaps it's not a coincidence. Maybe it's a quiet sign that you are on your way home, to yourself. No rush, no need for certainty, just honesty. Because the journey to awakening is not about climbing upward, it's about gently shedding what was never truly yours. And if through each loss, each pause, each unexpected detour, you continue to walk with an open heart, then you are already living a beautiful life in the most meaningful way. Thank you for being here with your presence and your heart. If you'd like to keep walking this journey with us, please subscribe to the Buddhism Seeds channel so you don't miss the next reflection. Hit like if this message resonated with you. Share it with someone who might need this reminder today and leave a comment below. What part of this message made you stop and think? We're always listening from the quietest place within.